President Trump is standing strong against the growing list of lawfare liberal lawsuits against him. One of the fights is over his effort to deport hundreds of alleged Venezuelan gang members, the worst of the worst. Many convicted of violent crimes and here illegally.
Okay, guys, this is absolutely unreal. A federal judge just blocked Trump's order to deport violent gang members, criminals that shouldn't even be here in the first place. Trump is calling this an outrageous overreach, and honestly, it's hard to disagree with him. This decision is a direct attack on presidential authority, and it raises some serious questions about the balance of power in this country. I want you to see exactly what's going on here, so let's roll the clip, and then we're going to break it all down.
Judge James Boasberg gave the Justice Department until noon Eastern today. He likes those noon deadlines. He wants the DOJ to hand over more information about those deportations, and he is the same judge who ordered those planes to turn around in the sky after they left the U.S. The president did not hold back.
He actually said we shouldn't be able to take criminals, killers, murderers, horrible, the worst people, gang members, gang leaders, that we shouldn't be allowed to take them out of our country. Well, that's a presidential job. That's not for a local judge to be making that determination.
All right. He also posted this. If a president doesn't have the right to throw murderers and other criminals out of the country because of a radical left lunatic judge wants to assume the role of president, then our country is in very big trouble and destined to fail. Republican Congressman Tim Burchett threw his support behind the president.
I stand with President Trump. I think it's a complete overreach by this judge. I think it's political overreach by the left. This is an act of war by these countries. These people have come in and they've come across our border illegally. What would happen if 14 million people swarmed the border at one time, yet it was spread out over 4 years? 14 million people. What do you consider that an unlawful invasion? It's an act of war.
You know, I've been paying attention to something. This is senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich, and you just heard Congressman Burchett say this. The number has crept up because now they're reaching out, Jackie, and they're finding out how many more people came across our border unvetted, some of them violent. I mean, it's amazing how far away we were from the truth, apparently. Jackie?
That's right. And, you know, to that point, Harris, the administration right now is not barred from using the Alien Enemies Act to continue to do these deportations, but they're supposed to notify the court before they use it in the future. So anyway, the administration has till noon today to provide information on specific movements that plane made, rejecting the claim that the judge's orders did not carry any force once that plane was outside U.S. territory. President Trump clearly not happy with what he sees as the judge's effort to override his presidential authority, but he was making clear last night he will operate within the bounds of the law.
Would you defy a court order? Because that we all know that was outrageous.
I never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future?
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges, and these are judges that shouldn't be allowed. I think at a certain point you have to start looking at what do you do when you have a rogue judge. The judge that we're talking about, you look at his other rulings. I mean, rulings unrelated, but having to do with me, he's a lunatic.
Yesterday, Trump called for Judge Boasberg, his impeachment. In a rare statement, though, Supreme Court Justice John Roberts pushed back, saying for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. President Trump appearing not to take that statement personally, though.
Well, he didn't mention my name in the statement. I just saw it quickly. He didn't mention my name, but many people have called for his impeachment, the impeachment of this judge.
Now, these alleged TDA gangsters were sent to a supermax prison in El Salvador, but yesterday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio threatened new, escalating, severe sanctions on the Maduro regime if Venezuela does not accept its repatriated citizens. ICE says there are about 258 Tren de Aragua gang members, which would likely be placed into removal proceedings if they are transferred into their custody, Harris.
All right, Jackie, thank you very much. Katie Cherkasky, constitutional law attorney and former federal prosecutor, is with me. Look, you heard from that report. The Aliens Enemy Act is not banning sending these bad guys back to their countries. The president and his team just have to notify the court. Why?
Well, even that requirement seems like a bit of an overreach by the judge. The Alien Enemies Act is essentially a unilateral power of the president to remove people who fall under the provisions of that act, as according to the president, from our country. And it's something that the Supreme Court has looked at and said that the courts do not have any sort of power to second guess. There are only, from my reading of the Supreme Court's previous interpretations of this, there's only some limited questions that a court can ask regarding the jurisdiction and whether somebody actually falls within the designated group. But certainly, this is a national security issue at the end of the day.
Look,
the president has that authority.
Katie, we're doing something that the Biden administration didn't bother to do. We're vetting the people before we send them out. They didn't even vet the people when they were coming in. So this is something that we know is happening. That's how we know so much about these guys. I mean, face recognition, they're working against people who are trying to help them, so they've got to go into communities, do all that great law enforcement, banding up of agencies and all of that. So if all that work is being done to round these guys up, why can't the judge just look at the file and say, yeah, A through F, yeah, those guys need to get out of here? But my big question is, how does a district court judge trim the powers of a United States president when it comes to getting out people who are dangerous to the citizens of this country?
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I think this judge has well overstepped his bounds, but they really can't theoretically do that. But the problem is that because the case starts at the lower level here, this judge is saying this particular law, the Alien Enemies Act, has never been used to target a specified group. It's only been used against citizens of countries against whom we've been at war. And so there's a question about, does this actually apply here, versus if you have people here illegally, even criminals, there is immigration processes and due process that is required to get a removal order. They cannot just be summarily removed, which under the Alien Enemies Act, the president can order their removal without any due process whatsoever. And that's the gripe, essentially, that they're not getting due process, even if those things are true, that they are criminals.
Well, and please, don't misunderstand. I'm not pushing against what you're saying. This is not my opinion. This is fact. This is common sense. This is the president of the United States. And because a district court judge says he's never seen it applied this way, there are a lot of things I haven't seen, but it doesn't mean that they don't stand.
Well, that, I think, is the big picture problem here. When you have these, quote unquote, unprecedented situations and you could interpret the law one way or the other to defer to the executive authority, and you're choosing to resist the agenda, to resist President Trump's actions, you are undermining that. And what, for what? To keep these people in our country? I mean, that's absolutely absurd at the end of the day.
I wish you were in the courtroom to ask that question. Like, what is the point of all of this? What is your goal to
protect due process for these people, when the same people are never in favor of that, when there's people accused of, let's say, like a Me Too crime? These are the same people. It's the hypocrisy is overwhelming.
Wow. Well, the numbers tell the story of the deluge of liberal lawfare against President Trump. Look, you just heard Katie saying it. I mean, it is what it is, and it is really obvious. In fewer than 2 months, judges have filed 15 injunctions halting Trump policies. That's more than President Biden's entire 4-year term and both Presidents Obama and George W. Bush's terms. Remember, they were both in office for 8 years each. President Trump also faced a whopping 64 injunctions in his first term. 3 of those came now, again in this one, just yesterday. One indefinitely blocked Trump's order banning transgender people from serving openly in the U.S. military. Another stopped the EPA's attempt to end $14 billion worth of grants to climate groups. A third halted the administration's efforts to dismantle USAID in the push to cut waste. President Trump is not going to stop.
Look at the fraud that we've caught. We've caught so much fraud, so much waste, so many employees that never showed up to work. I guarantee you, we will be appealing it. We have rogue judges that are destroying our country.
So, Katie, it's obvious what they're doing. And look, I know you're in law. You don't want to think of judges not being fair, but they're not.
Well, when you have the choice to interpret in a way that furthers the president's agenda or not, and you're making the choice to resist that and to make it so difficult to achieve these very noble goals. It's like these courts are saying you have to spend money on wasteful things that the American people want nothing to do with. You must give foreign aid to all of these other places instead of taking care of things here. This is essentially what the big picture is. I think a lot of these judges lose sight of the forest for the trees. And yes, there is a question about the extent of a president's authority, whether it's statutorily or constitutionally derived. And you have to look at that in certain cases. And, there are processes to go through. But when there's a valid interpretation that furthers the executive's authority, I think that needs to be respected.
Well, look, if the judges, if the attorneys, the ACLU is even getting involved at one point with the Mahmoud Khalil situation, the protester who was with groups aligned with Hamas, that he was leading those protest groups on the campus of Columbia University. I mean, you've got it coming from every angle, and you can't ignore the politics of this. So whose side are the lawfare pushers on? It's like a drug for them.
Well, yeah, and with the Khalil situation, of course, now they love the First Amendment. But when anybody spoke out against COVID, of course, they lost their jobs, they lost their livelihoods. I mean, these are the picking and choosing of, the law to further that purpose. And that is lawfare, because that's clearly inconsistent across the board here. And so everything is meant to undermine President Trump's agenda.
Yeah. One target, as you say, President Trump. It's not even on behalf of the American people, because these decisions don't keep us safe.
Well, it's contrary to the wishes of the people from what we know.
Katie, it's always great to have you. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, if you're tired of these ridiculous legal attacks, do me a big favor, smash that like button. It really helps with the YouTube channel, guys, helps the video get out to more people. Now, let's talk about what we just saw. And we got to get this straight. We're talking about Venezuelan gang members, violent criminals, and a judge is saying, no, you can't deport them. Guys, Trump isn't even asking for new powers here. He's using existing presidential authority under the Alien Enemies Act. The question is, why would any judge block this? What's the real motivation behind this ruling? You all saw those numbers, guys. That was absolutely insane. This isn't just about one case. This is part of a pattern. Trump has faced 15 injunctions in just 2 months. I want you to think about that for a second. More than Biden's entire presidency, 2 months. 2 months. Guys, this is lawfare. This is, by definition, lawfare. Weaponizing the courts to tie Trump's hands, stop him from doing his job. Congressman Tim Burchett even called it an act of war. An invasion happening in slow motion. Guys, do you agree with that assessment? Let me know what you think. Trump is being blocked from deporting criminals, but look at how the courts treat conservatives versus the left. We saw the very same thing during COVID. Lockdowns for law-abiding Americans, but protests for their political allies. Guys, the hypocrisy is insane. What happened to protecting actual American citizens instead of foreign criminals? Trump is calling this judge that we're talking about here, a lunatic. Literally called him a lunatic. When he said that, I was like, whoa. Even saying he should be impeached. But guys, here's the problem. Supreme Court Justice John Roberts is saying that impeachment isn't the answer. So if the courts refuse to hold radical judges accountable, what's the solution here? And what's next? Trump says that this will be appealed, and he's right to fight it. Meanwhile, Biden is still facing, Biden failed to secure the border, even though he could have used the same powers that Trump is trying to use. Biden absolutely refused to do anything about it. At the end of the day, this is a fight over the rule of law itself. Let me know what you think, guys. Is this ruling a reckless overreach, or is there more to it? Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think, guys. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Don't miss out on the next video. And if you want to support the channel and help us keep bringing the truth, consider becoming a channel member. Guys, I'll see you in the next one.